It did it. Good morning, guys. Hey, it's Ted Bogard. Welcome back to the TED Show. We're kicking it off a little earlier this morning on this happy hump day. We've got Melissa Winston with us. We are going to talk about her journey, her podcast, What a Day Kids, all the great work that she is doing in the community. And of course, I have to give a shout out to the one and only Boris for making the introduction. Melissa, welcome to the show. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing really, really, really well for a Wednesday. I feel like it's still a Tuesday. Don't have my days right yet, but closer to the weekend. All right. So the audience loves to know origin story. They want to know about you. And then we can, get into what you're doing now. But tell them a little history of Melissa Winston.
Well, I was born and raised in Central Florida. So I went to school right here in Milwee and Lyman. And then I moved away for college. But when I came back, I needed a job. And, as you do. And so I ended up interviewing and getting hired at a private school and became a teacher for the first time.
You had no plans to do that, right?
No, my whole life, all these people, oh, you'd make such a great teacher. You'd be such a good teacher. And I was like, never. I will never be a teacher. Never, not once. And then I was like, oh, I'm a teacher. Okay. But loved it. Loved it so much. And that was back in 2014. And then moved from private school to public school. And so now I teach at a public middle school, and I love it. I don't know why I was so against teaching.
What was your original dream or goal to be or to do?
I knew that I wanted to work with kids. So why I was so against teaching, I don't know. But I always wanted to do something with kids, but I did so many things before this. I did social media marketing. I was an office manager for a few small businesses. I worked at a juvenile detention center.
You had it all, and you still wanted to work with kids.
And I still winded up teaching.
So but you do a lot in the community, so let's talk about that. You're an advocate. You do obviously a lot with kids, and we'll talk about your podcast in a minute. Tell everybody what you do in the community. What's your activity? What's your focus?
So I teach a varying exceptionalities class, which is special education. And that's really where my heart is, are for students that, just have some different hurdles to climb than a lot of other people, and helping them figure out how to be, but also helping the world figure out how to interact with them, instead of just teaching my students how to interact with the world. So that's really my biggest goal, is teaching the world how to interact with my students.
So what would you educate, or how would you educate a parent who, because kids can be cruel, they're cruel to each other, on ways that they can teach their children how to interact in a positive way? I think a lot of stuff comes from fear. Yeah. Not knowing, not understanding. I don't think all of it's evil, like a lot of people say. I really think kids just attack or get afraid of things that they don't understand, and therefore don't really have the tools to educate themselves. So what can parents do? What can caregivers do?
I would definitely say to just have open and honest conversations. When you see somebody out in public, don't be like, oh, don't look at them, or be like, hey, yeah, they're in a wheelchair, because sometimes people have to use wheelchairs to get around, just like you walk, they use a wheelchair to walk. And then not shying away from those conversations, but then also encouraging their children to go and talk to these other kids and be like, hey, how are you? And try to make friends just like you would any other person. And not being afraid of asking questions, because a lot of times they'll just be like, yeah, of course I'll answer that. Not a problem. But if you're like, oh, I don't want to embarrass or then you're making it a bigger deal and
Yeah,
making
because
them feel more alienated.
your perception is, I would imagine, as a kid or even as a parent of a kid, well, you don't want to ask them anything too personal, but sometimes you have to ask at least some questions so that you can begin the dialogue. You can actually
Right.
open it up. I think it would be better, in my opinion, for a special needs child to have an interaction that's positive and inquisitive over complete ignoring and ghosting.
Absolutely, because like they pick up on that like feeling of alienation, like they can sense that, and then but if somebody's like, hey, like I had a student in my class that was blind, and none of my kids had ever encountered that before, and so my students were like, what's up with that? And I was like, oh yeah, she's touching you a lot because that's how she sees. You know what I mean? Like she's going to be touching around and feeling things and doing all that because that's her eyes don't work like our eyes work. So she uses her hands to see. And they were like, oh, okay. And then they would just like be like, hey, why don't you come feel my arm? Do you see my shirt? And they would like,
right, they become inquisitive and they want to. Kids do love. I mean, they want to be part. They want to include other kids, and sometimes they just don't have the tools. So encouraging them and educating them is so important. What about the system itself? I remember when I was in middle school, we had special needs class, and I always felt bad for them because they were isolated and they didn't get to do the things on any level that the kids who were not special needs got to do. What's it like now?
So I do teach, it's called a self-contained class. So my students are with me basically the entire day. I teach all the subjects. But that doesn't mean like we go out for electives. I always like, and I don't just be like, okay, the class is going to this elective. So too bad, so sad if you don't like it. Right? Like that's not it. So like I have kids who really like to sing, so they go to chorus. I have kids who love athletics, so they go to PE. I have kids who are amazing artists, and so they go to art. You know what I mean? Like I try to find those ways to make sure that they're going out and included. And then I also get these wonderful students called peer tutors that come into my class, and they become like my little teacher assistants. And they become really great friends with my kids. And so when they see them out, they're like, oh, hey, how are you? And then my kids are like, that's my friend. And I'm like, yes, it is.
That makes the heart.
Genuine relationships. It's not just like, oh, yeah, I help out in my class. They build like actual friendships. And so, yes, they might be with me for a larger portion of the day just because of their need for their learning environment, their sensory needs, etc., the curriculum that they need to learn with. But we try as much as possible to make sure that they're getting the same experiences as every other student.
Oh, it's so good. That is so good. I love to hear that. I just felt like I remember, and this is, in the Ice Age, but I remember that they would still go to PE together. They'd have their own art class. There was no interaction really, except maybe bus pickup, and even that tended to be they had their own transportation because of their needs. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the podcast. What a day, kids! Tell me about the impetus behind that. What was the reason for wanting to create a podcast?
Well, I'll be honest, it wasn't something I had ever really thought about doing, but then...
That's a theme in your life, I think.
It is, That's just what I need to do, just not think about anything, and then it'll happen.
I like that very much.
Yeah, it wasn't until Boris and Marla, they were like, hey, you keep... because I work at the Mills Gallery, too, and so they were like, hey, you keep coming in and telling us stories about your day with these kids. Like, this should be a podcast. And I was like, I never thought about that. But okay, like, let's think about this more, right? And then it kind of snowballed into this What a Day Kids. And I called it What a Day Kids. I have one of my students at the end of every single day. She always takes this big sigh and she's like, what a day, kids. It's just so funny. I was like, that's exactly what this needs to be. So yeah, so I
So what do you talk about? Where do you obviously it's coming from personal experience. Do you talk about the issues that are going on? Do you try to bring light, or is it more lighthearted and it's more sharing? What's the podcast like?
I think it's a little bit of both. So I try to, we have like 3 sections. The first one is like me talking a little bit, explaining like who I'm talking to, but also like little bits of what's been going on in my classroom and my life. And then we have a guest on the show who it's either a fellow teacher or parents or sometimes even celebrities that have experiences. And then my favorite part is at the end when I get to talk to one of my students and interview them. And so then people get to see, okay, meet my kids, right? And meet these people and not just be talking about them, right? That was really important for me making this. I didn't want to just be talking about neurodivergent or students. And I wanted to include them in the conversation since it's about them. So
you know what I love is that I think that people would not expect that. So what it does is it humanizes. And I know that sounds crazy, but you think special, we're so desensitized in this world. So you have to humanize, you have to put a face, a real breathing human being who speaks from their experience to begin to melt down some of those layers of judgment and negativity that we have. I love that because then they can hear they can hear their stories. It's a personal thing. It's not just their wonderful teacher sharing. It's actually their story too.
Yeah, and then they get to meet and see how funny they are, how smart they are. Like obviously in our classroom, like we're doing serious stuff, we're learning, we're doing this, but we have the best time because they are just the funniest, smartest kids like ever. And so I'm just really excited that people get to not just hear me say that, because sometimes I feel like I'm a little biased, right? Like I spend all my days with them, right? But then they get.
Well, you're a little biased, but that's okay. You also have an inner knowledge that a lot of people don't have. Yeah. What's the long-term goal for what you're doing in our community? What do you want to do with what a day kids and any kind of advocacy out there?
My goal would just be to continue to uplift the voices of my students and their families, and just raise more awareness, and hopefully that will lead to more inclusion, right? So a more accessible, a more acceptable world for my students and those who identify with them and who are like them. So that's my big
goal. Important. I love what you're doing. I love the idea behind the podcast. All right, so tell them how they can find you, how they can find the podcast. You can even, so Boris feels good, you can even tell them where to find the gallery if you'd like.
So the podcast is premiering today.
Woo!
11 a.m.
Woo!
My Facebook is What a Day Kids. The same thing for Instagram and Twitter is What a Day Kids. The show, you can find it on pftmedia.com. It should also be available at 11 a.m. on all podcast platforms. And
exciting for you. This is exciting.
It is. I'm a little nervous, but like a good, excited nervous, not like a terrified nervous.
I'm excited for you. I love it. You know, when Boris and Marla E get an idea in their heads, there's no stopping them.
No, so, they've been so great and supportive, and really, I couldn't thank them more.
Well, now I know why he's like, you have to talk to Melissa Winston. Now I get it. All right, y'all go out and support. She's basically a local advocate, but really she's got a national message. Go out and support. Look for What a Day Kids on all of the social media or all the media platforms, and it's at What a Day Kids. Pretty much on any social media you want to look for it. Melissa Winston, you're a joy. I appreciate it. Come back anytime. Maybe give us an update on the podcast and what you're doing. But thanks for the amazing work that you do in our world. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Woo! All right. Melissa Winston, go out and support her, guys.